All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. Go ahead with the roll call.
Chairman Ryan Green.
Here.
Jesse Copple. Walter Robb.
Here.
Steve Dyer.
Here.
Ben Lee.
Here. All right, we'll go with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Love it. Love this town. Love this town.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Move on to action on minutes from the March 28th, 2023 meeting. I'll make a motion to approve.
So moved.
All in favor?
Did you make the motion?
Aye.
I made the motion.
Oh, well, I'll second.
Yeah, I knew what you meant.
Aye. I thought you were asking for one.
All right, so we've approved that. We'll go ahead and move on to public comment on matters not on tonight's agenda. Is there any public comment on things we won't be talking about tonight? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to application Z-23-72. This is a variance for 6 South Main Street. I'll go ahead and go to our staff first to give us a background, and then I'll allow our applicant to come up and speak.
And I am still trying to play catch up, but
Okay, I can go to our applicant first if you
No,
want.
I can muddle through. I'm just trying to get all the visuals, but I think I can at least give a narrative to start off, if that's okay.
All right.
The TV's on.
Yeah, I'll get to it. You want me? I'll get to it after.
I just didn't turn them on.
Okay.
You're plugged in.
I may or may not need them.
Okay.
Pretty quick, project narrative, applicant is located at 6 South Main Street. It is a GCC 1 zoning district. Applicant is requesting a variance to section 1177 of the codified ordinances to allow for a total of 4 wall signs. The current building has and this is a correction that I wanted to point out, after doing some research, we're not certain that it actually is a variance. The minutes would reflect from a prior council meeting back in 2015, should say zoning meeting, back in 2015, a recommendation was given to council, or supposed to be given to council, to allow for corner lots to have 2 wall signs if they were under a certain amount of square footage, and in that case it was 50. I do want to point out that at the time, it had a completely different zoning text for signs. So the sign text that was in place in 2015 is not the same that exists today. So, like I said, I want to clarify, in the report, it was my understanding that it was a variance. It actually started to go through the variance process, but then the board, after granting so many variances, they were making the recommendation that council just change the rules to allow for 2 wall signs to be on a corner lot building. So I do want to clarify that, but our current code, if I can move forward, our current code will only allow for 1 wall sign per building. That's in our current 1177.15. A variance would need to be granted for the 2 additional signs. Currently, there are 2 signs that exist there, which is over the allowable amount for the code that only allows for 1 per building. So this board is being tasked tonight with allowing for 2 additional signs on top of the 2 that are already there. So that's the project narrative at the beginning. Skipping all the way to the end. At some point, I'm going to just remove the recommendation thing, because I don't know that I ever give you a recommendation. I give you a highlight reel of things that you'll want to look at. Wall signs. Guidance.
Yeah.
Guidance so that you
Nothing
can
wrong
make an
with-
informed decision upon your own impartial views from me. I will interject if I ever see anything legally that could get you into trouble, but on these types of things, there are obviously considerations that are given, and that is for the board to decide, not necessarily myself. Like I said, I'll advise whenever I see something legally that could be detrimental to the city. So, buildings that face 2 public roadways have been granted a variance for 2 wall signs with prior applicants. The most recent being Chase Bank. A couple other ones are Huntington, would say Hopewell Federal is another one. And I will go back to, those are two signs which currently exist there. These locations share similar environmental conditions which are unique to the applicant. The applicant is requesting 4 signs for one building, which is slightly different from the prior variances request. Staff recommends the commission review the factors outlined above and give special attention to highlighted sections. Staff would also recommend a scale drawing with the facade measurements to be submitted to the commission and staff for calculation purposes. That was something that was missing from this particular application. Not sure that that's the applicant's fault. They may not have been advised or aware that that was something that we wanted, but moving forward, it would be a recommendation that I would have so that we could have some measurements, because the current sign code, they base the total amount of square footage upon the linear square feet of a particular building. So from a guidance standpoint, to see how far we're out or inside of that area, it would be helpful if we had some measurements from the side of the building. So with that, I will stop talking, allow you all to have the applicant come up and give you information, and I'll be here to answer any questions, or you tell me you want to see stuff on the computer and I will pull that up as necessary.
All right, we'll go ahead and have our applicant come up.
How's it going today? Thanks for having me out today. So the main thing is 84 by 27 is the dimensions. It's going to be the exact same size as the one on Main Street. The main thing, when we initially first started looking at the building, the big plus of it was being able to be on both sides of that. Obviously, both roads are, highly trafficked, and a majority of our team either currently lives in Johnstown or actually grew up here. So we kind of thought through routine route process, and that was a big reason why we chose that building. For the linear square footage, we are well below. And I had initially spoke with Jim about the other side and did the math for the Coshocton side as well.
So you're just 84 by 27 feet, so it's 84.
Inches is the sign.
Oh, so the scaling that we were looking at was for the dimensions of the building,
Yep.
so that we could get a linear square footage there, but that's helpful for 84 inches by 24. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry,
27.
27.
27.
I didn't do an exact measurement, but I stepped it off along Main Street. I got about approximately 39 feet, and along Coshocton, I got 63 feet.
Okay. And I don't know what the height would be, but that would be a determining factor as well. But thank you, Walter.
I mean, yeah, just because of the linear feet was important in the situation.
It is also 2 stories, and the one sign you had mentioned before is on that, well above, on that second story.
All right, is there anything else you'd like to add on that?
Open to any questions
Okay.
or anything else I can help with.
All right, we'll go ahead and open to questions from our commission.
Just so I know, could you give us your name, introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Craig Bueller with the Powell Bueller Group. This is my father-in-law, John.
It's a team business, it's a real estate company.
Okay.
Walter, you have any other questions?
Yeah, I've got some other questions, and one of the things, it talks about, is there any situations that we could alleviate or obviate this situation through some other means? And if you had one sign on each side that had both of them, and you'd have enough footage to do that, because of the linear distance, and it's 1.5 times the square foot times the lineal feet, so you could have potentially a sign, 4 foot high, and depending on which side it's on. I think the one was, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think one was 6 foot and the other one might have been 8 foot or longer. So, I mean, have you thought about that as having the two with the one sign, and you wouldn't even need the variance?
Talking about the insurance company conjoining with the real estate company.
Correct.
So we haven't come through that. The hard part is, so the insurance company also has multiple other locations. And while there's potentially a business relationship, I'm not sure that the insurance company would really kind of want that logo together and visually have us like a coherent business. So that question has not been brought up to him, but I'm thinking he wouldn't be real open to that.
The other thing is, we're already on the other side, exactly like we'll be on this side, except we flip the signs. You know what I mean? So the congruency would be a little different if it was on that side of the building, which, you know, if he would do that, we would be open to it, but I don't know that, if it's necessary, we would do that.
Okay, I'm just saying
It's
that.
a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it was something-
Both of them would be the same way, we'd be changing everything.
Yeah, I mean,
we've done.
there could still be a line between them to separate them,
Sure.
but, you know, one sign
I got you.
potentially could meet this without the need for variance. Now, I did notice that yesterday that there are 2 signs on the side facing Main Street,
Yep.
so.
There's, I don't know if you got the picture of it, but there it is right there, you can see how it's gonna look.
Yeah, that's similar to the one that's on
Oh,
Main
yeah.
Street.
Yep.
Yeah, I
They're
did
exactly
see that,
similar.
that's up there.
That's just that's not the.
Yeah, I didn't
exactly
expect
the
that
sign,
one.
but,
Is the one on Main Street, is that a permanent type sign or a temporary sign, or, you know?
Permanent.
It is a permanent sign, okay.
So you're saying there's already 2 signs on Main Street?
Correct.
What are they? I thought there was one.
There's technically more than that if you look at the whole, if you look at the building as a whole.
You can't count the second floor though.
I mean, there's more buildings, or there's a whole building there. You have more than 2 signs on it.
But you can't count the second floor. The second floor is grandfathered in.
Yeah, there's 2 stories, and the sign collage is on the top of the story, you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, not going there right now.
The lodge's been there forever. You just share space inside.
Right. For the most part, yeah, it's just very shared. We are separated, still to keep the businesses separate, more us on the left and them on the right.
The
Joe.
entrance door is the same for both businesses, but after that, it's directed to the right, to the particular business.
You don't share, it's not like an open floor plan, it's,
We haven't talked about
there is a
much of it all.
separation.
You guys too much. We just started.
Okay.
So you guys partitioned off with a wall from the rest of the business, or are you more like a desk in there, or like a cubicle, or how's that set up?
It's more so our separated office to the left with its own bathroom, and then the front kind of entrance, since it's their building and that's how they had it set up, they're still going to keep their main desk right there. So yeah, separate, just as you walk in, there's a little bit of conjoined area.
And Ryan, the rooms were already there, they didn't have to do anything inside the building. And there is a conference room that they will share with the insurance company if they need it. So-
it's just leased space. Yeah.
It's a big, it works perfectly, there's
Sure.
plenty of room in there for sure, we're really pleased with it.
Jim, has there been any public comments about this?
No. There were only 3 contiguous property owners.
So would you guys be open to a suggestion that the sign be built with a little bit higher quality, like the B&T Insurances, looks like it's made out of wood. It's more 3-dimensional in design. We're trying to get away from the square, real thin, I don't know what material that's made out of, plastics.
Well, Fast Line did it, I mean, it's professionally done, and it's probably an inch thick.
But would you guys be open to maybe if we passed it with a condition that we get a different sign quality?
Would you want us to do both signs that way? Because, I mean, they'd be the same, they're similar.
One thing maybe is that graphic there doesn't really give it credit. If you look at the Main Street one, it does have all the dimensions on the frame and all the letters. It is also the highest quality that Fast Sign does. So it's
And I know that we've had several signs made by Fast Sign on the street, and I'm not a big fan of this type of signage, to be honest with you. And so, if I give a variance, it would be my recommendation that we get a little bit higher quality sign. What's the
We're definitely always open to suggestions, and we actually initially spoke with Steve, who owns the insurance
you're talking
company.
about-
I mean, I like the idea of you guys being able to have signage on both streets. I'll be totally honest with you. I mean, it's more marketing, it's better marketing, and I want to support our downtown businesses. I think, whatever we can do to help, I'd like to make it help. A part of our job is also trying to make the downtown look as nice as we can, and signage has been one of our big areas of influence, in trying to get a more cohesive signage code and look. So we're trying to maintain like the historical downtown look. And so if you guys would be open to suggestion, if you guys would be open to maybe re-rendering the signage design a little bit, to fit into a more historical feel. Does that make sense?
Definitely open to suggestions. Are you thinking like a wood backing? The main thing is,
I'll be totally
Yeah, sure,
honest
I guess.
that
I tried to reach out to who made that, and Steve actually let me know that they parted ways because of the wood wasn't holding up. They already had multiple issues with it, and that's why we went the PVC route, and we wanted to have it look amazing, and that's why we did the additional dimensions as well.
You've seen the sign on the other side, I'm just making sure. The sign on the other side is exactly what this one would be. This is just a
and
positioning more than anything else, and the size is about right. I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
Jesse, I
I
didn't,
Yes,
mean,
that's fine.
that's become.
Okay,
These
yes,
are
all
all
right.
dimensions, and the frame comes out as well.
All right. Okay. So that's a little bit higher quality sign than
On the front.
some of the other
yeah,
ones
yeah,
I'm thinking.
That's not the sign.
Yeah, that's.
Is
not
this the sign that's going to be on the side too then?
The exact
Okay.
same.
I like that then, I think
It's,
that.
yeah, the other one's already out. That's just, like I said, positioning.
Right.
I was just gonna say it might, be best to just talk about applicability first, and then if we agree, we can start
Okay.
talking about it.
Sorry, am I jumping the gun?
No, that's okay. That's all right. I don't wanna step on your toes. I'm just
It's
making
become real estate road down through there, so there's so many different signs, I know.
There is. Other questions from?
Oh, this
our
is tough
commissioners?
because, like Jesse said, we want to support our businesses and we want to do what we can for you, but also at the same time, we want to stick to the code. I like Walter's head's at about having a conversation about having one sign, and he just told us that his sign's not holding up. So I don't know if that's a conversation you can have with them, but
Tough decision.
I could definitely ask him.
This is a difficult conversation. And I would say it's difficult because I wish representatives from B&T would be here as well. Because I think this is probably a broader conversation
You want
from
to
a,
table it and we bring, Steve
from
can
a
come in, I'm sure.
building perspective, because you both are involved. Where my hangup is looking at the code and looking at what's there. I'm not convinced that the sign on South Main Street is permissible right now. Because the way that the code is written is that it's one sign per building, not one sign per building per use. And that's what's being applied right here, right now, as B&T is in there and you're in there. And I get wanting to advertise the business, it's essential, 100%. But the code isn't written that way. The variance that was given, as best as I can tell from the minutes from 2015, was for an additional sign to be put on a corner building. And we've applied that same logic for the businesses that Sean has mentioned for other areas where you have frontage on a main street and you've got a public space in the rear as in a parking lot. And again, you talk about Huntington Bank, you talk about Hopewell, you talk about, I don't know if Huntington did it or not, but Chase most recently. And it was done with that same logic. So here, to me, if there was a variance to be applied, it would be a variance for 2 additional signs for this building, and not just 1. So to start off, I'm not convinced that the one on South Main is even permissible. If this was to be something that I would entertain, for me, it would be 1 sign on each side and it would be combined. The design or the quality, I think, is TBD if we agree that the applicability is there. But the reason why I ask about the inside aspect is because when you talk about buildings that house multiple tenants, typically you have a single sign on the outside, and it's whoever owns the building, whoever has rights to the naming of the building, or the building is named something, and then you have a slate of businesses on the inside for those that are coming in and visiting whatever their business is. That's a typical application. Would you agree, typically.
I understand what you're saying exactly.
And so
I
that's-
get that.
that's the lens
Just
that I'm
trying to
looking
think
at.
of all the businesses out there and how they're doing it, but I'm with you.
And it's different for each municipality, it's different for each area, it's different for each zoning district, so there is some nonconformity to apply to that, but typically when you see multiple tenants, you'll typically see,
Can you pull
unless the
up
code applies
what's
otherwise.
the-
So for this, when you
Barber's
talk
building,
about intent
where he has all
of the
businesses in
code,
there?
the intent of the code is to ensure that you don't have a ton of signs on a building and it destroys the historical aspects of the building. It doesn't become obnoxious, it doesn't become overwhelming or distracting, especially at that intersection, which the pro is that it's last I saw, the second busiest rural intersection in the state of Ohio. And it's only going, rural.
Yeah.
It's only going to get busier.
We don't need a miniature Times Square.
It's only going to get busier, but at the same time, that's a pro because that's where you are and that's where your business is located. The difficulty then is looking at the application. To me, the application isn't complete because we don't have the metrics that we were talking about that are stated as the application should be submitted in 1133, talking about variances. And so that leaves some of the decision-making, some of the measurements up to us, or Walter, went down and did a walk-off, which is great. But is that precise enough to be able to understand square footage as it applies to the metrics that are in the code? I would say probably not. Now, what is in our favor is that we have 60 days from the time the application was submitted to make the decision. So by no means do we have to do an up or down today.
Hard to pull up, isn't it?
But we could, to your point, table it. We could ask for B&T to be here. We can give a little bit of background of some of the other information that we're looking at, and source some other opinions, so we're having an informed conversation. But that's where some of my hangups are, is
I think I can still make the
I'm
point.
not there, and I don't think the one on South Main is even permissible, the way that the code is written.
I guess some of my point is if you had two entrances, two for on Main Street, two on the others, then I could see more of a need for, the signage, where you've got one entrance on Main, one on Coshocton. I think I'm more leaning towards more one sign, but if you'd like to have both of them up there, that's where I'm personally leaning at. And I think Ben's, that's where he's potentially going as well.
See, yeah, so.
Yeah, I would not mind a tabling on this as well. To have both.
Yeah, and I'm fine with tabling, because I'm a dimensions guy, so I like to have the numbers. That's why I stepped it off, just to get an idea, and then also to help the others, so we have an idea what we're looking at.
A couple things come to mind, and we want to do what you guys want us to do. And I think Steve Brown may allow us to put his logo and our logo together in some manner and do that in a similar fashion, on that one side. Are you asking for us to do it on both sides? Is that what you're asking?
It would be, at this point, because what was granted was two signs for this one building. And what should be codified is what was talked about in 2015, which we should do, that you can't have two signs on a court building.
So again, it's your choice. It's your choice how we proceed, but I think what he's saying is that we table it, you guys amend your application for, depending on what you and B&T work out, to apply for two variances or one variance and a combined sign maybe on one side, have a backup plan possibly.
I think if you do a combined sign, that there probably doesn't need to be.
variance.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
you could
If
do it.
he's got to decide if he wants to shoot for two signs, that's two variances, and that application should be amended that way, right?
Still be one variance. Still be
So it'd be one variance,
just a variance application.
one variance application requesting
But what
two
I'd also
variances.
say too is that
or
you're
two
not
signs.
beholden to a wall sign. You could do a window sign as well.
And I think that's how it's been done, because my thought when I came to this was, that's who owns the building that I'm talking about? That's Nybarger's building?
Oh, shoot.
Where they have several businesses in there. There's one building and there's, 5 businesses in there now?
Foursquare is the
Yeah.
name of the owner.
Yeah.
My,
And if you look at that one, you have one, on the awnings, you have one sign.
It may have been removed.
I'll be honest though, this
gonna
height,
say, 'cause it's
with
like
this
right
quality of
there.
sign, I like this better than the window sign.
He's got
So
something to
this
say.
is,
You-
this
you're
is
gonna add
what,
something?
this is what I'm referencing
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So I think it's the gray one there.
At one time, there was a
yeah.
multi-tenant sign. And it's
So
since
whether,
been-
yeah, whether you either do a multi-tenant sign or something like that, we're going for a, you know, we're going for a clean look, and not that yours would be a cluttered look, but we're going for a clean look.
Can you go back to that area where the sign is up, when our sign's not on that? And just, I just wanna make a point. You guys understand this, I don't, it's not a big point, but the square footage in this building is so much bigger than several of the other spots down the street. So, you know, there's room, plenty of room for two businesses in there. And I think
Trucks,
when we
right?
Of
added.
course, there's a truck.
We
he goes a
Yeah,
little
no, the
further.
truck there.
There we go.
But when we added that sign, you can see the congruency was better because it's right over that window. So you got two signs there. You know see what I'm saying? Is there's a sign here, and now we've got our sign here, and to me, it just looks better. Right? You guys have seen it, right?
I like
It looks better,
seen it.
doesn't it?
I think it looks better.
Because it looks like something's gone here, right? We want to just be on the other side for the same reason, is we want, you know, the congruency of the two sides.
For me, the less signs on a building, the better. If
But
there
that
can be,
looks-
if there can be consolidation, and I won't comment on their sign, but I mean, if there can be consolidation, that's what I would be open to. You know, a more sleek look, you know, a better, you know, a look where at least maybe both of those signs look similar. I understand kind of what Jesse was saying, but you know, just more of a clean, condensed look, I think is what I would be in favor of.
Now we're kind of going back to what, do we want it to look similar, want them together? I mean, now I'm doing a little dance up there. I want to do what you guys want, okay? And I don't know that Steve Brown wants to change the sign for sure, so that's really not even.
He also has many other locations with that exact same thing. So it's very, very unlikely. Initially, Jim and I had done the math. He helped me get some of the dimensions, and it was just way, way below. That's why we didn't put it in here. I can definitely, especially for Walter, get those measurements and get that all in front
As
of
far
you.
as ownership of that building, that's one owner, but 3 uses in that building, correct, Sean?
Yeah, if you're looking at
Well,
the
the
building
Masons.
from a two-story standpoint, yes, I believe the Masons has their own entrance off of another access point, and then this particular lower floor would have a singular entrance.
But we're still talking one owner for the entire building.
That I believe to be true. I know there is some history with this particular building that exists, that there's some kind of weird wonky lease for 100-year.
Yeah.
Typical
Putting the sign
Johnstown
closet.
style.
So the
Yeah.
insurance company owner owns the whole building. and
Right.
The Masons have the 100-year.
They enter here, there's a door
Right.
here which we're not accessing right here, which would go right into our office. So, you know, it would completely, we wouldn't be together at that point if we just did that. We wouldn't have to come into their entrance, which would change kind of the whole logic here that we're talking about. I don't want to go down that road. Let's not make it too complicated. I also think that if this wasn't up there, this looks like something's missing, doesn't it? To you? I mean, to me, it does.
I think when you look at most singular buildings or a plaza of buildings or things like that, you have a marquee sign and then you have businesses listed under that, and it kind of cleans that up and makes it a condensed look. And I think I would be in favor of something more like that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just for clarity's sake, the variance request that will have to be before you.
Right.
Is for 2 signs. So the one that's
Right.
currently up will need the variance in order for it to stay, as well as the additional one that would be potentially going up. Both of those, in order to meet code, would need a variance to exist. I want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. And I'm not giving an opinion, I'm literally going from what is in our code book, what council has given as an ordinance that I am tasked to enforce. That's where I'll leave it. It has to be for 2, or else, from an enforcement standpoint, I'm not doing what council has told, or Jim's not doing what council
No,
has told.
I understand that.
So-
It has to be for 2 unless they decide to condense.
If they
And then-
condense-
And then that makes all of this much easier. And
it
as
meets the
Ben
square
said,
footage requirement.
it meets the square
If it
footage.
meets what the code says, then there's no need to come before the board.
Right.
Yeah, but
That's
they gotta
what
deal
we're
with
saying. You could,
the owner.
you could make things a lot easier going that route.
And again, if there's a window sign or a different type of sign that's applied instead of a wall sign, and it meets what's in the book, you don't have to come before the board. As it stands right now, in my opinion, I understand what you're saying about design, This is about application and quantity and metrics, not about design. Congruency, totally get it. B&T, maybe they can move their sign over to make it look more symmetrical in that way, shape, or form. Maybe it's there for structural integrity if the building gets hit again. I don't know. But it's been hit about 3 times, I think, that I can recall.
I think we fixed that now. We have the bells.
Well, there is
That's right.
symmetry on that front part of that building.
Sure, sure. And I don't disagree with that. My point is that the code lays out quantity and not necessarily placement. You're not talking about digging a foundation or anything like that, but I understand what you're saying.
We would be more inclined to do
Then there
nothing
was,
than to start changing everything. And I don't know if that's where we've gone down this path, but at this point, I mean, I'd rather not put the sign on that side if it's that big of a problem and leave it as it is. We did that with confidence that was fine to do. We came through the proper channels to put the first sign out.
We asked about that.
Sure.
I see that here under E. I saw, and that was one question I was gonna ask. So it says the property owner knew of the zoning restriction and knew he would receive the variance. And that was semi-troubling for me because any variance that comes before us is not necessarily guaranteed.
It's a bold statement.
It is. So anyone saying that they knew they were gonna receive a variance, that's semi-troubling for me. I'm not sure how we arrived at that
We didn't
statement, but.
perceive we needed a variance for the first sign we put up.
Sure. No, I totally
Is that
understand.
right or not?
You would need a variance
You
for
would
that
need a
sign.
variance on that
I
sign.
understand
By the way the
that
code
was
is
your
written.
thought as to why you put that up. I don't believe that that is permissible as it stands. So the direction that was given to allow that to be put up, in my opinion, was incorrect based off of how the code is written. Because again, it feels like the code may have been interpreted as one sign per business, per building. I don't take it that way. It's one sign per building, and the variance that was granted in 2015 was for the additional sign for B&T, and that then, it's not codified, there is historical precedence for it, and it should be codified for the corner building, for that to be the norm. But the variance at this point, because the code still says one sign per building, is for any additional signage added to that building, South Main or Coshocton. So to Sean's point, the variance should be amended, if it stays as is, it should be amended to read 2 signs, at the very least. But I would then request also, to Walter's point, and to,
I'm not sure what to do now.
if you want to continue down the path with putting signs up on the outside and have the conversation, and continue to have the conversation around a variance request, which moves it into a little bit more of a substantial, because you're talking about doubling the number of signs on the building than what is the norm, then the amendment to the application would have to be for 2 signs.
If there is a separate door, if we use the other door,
Access doesn't matter.
Access doesn't matter, and you could like we said,
building
you could
itself.
simplify this completely and
I would
join
love to
join
do
up
that.
signs with a different design, and you wouldn't even need to come through us.
Well, if they
But-
put 2, they would still need, my recommendation would be, if they're gonna put 1 on each side, our current code only allows for 1 on the building.
Since-
Even though a variance was granted prior,
That variance is for that sign.
the variance was for that sign. I don't wanna speak for the board, but it's been consistent with others,
But historical application.
Right.
doesn't always,
Were you involved in the 2015
I was
decision?
not.
No.
I was
Okay.
not, no.
I knew you're around.
I
The
think I was at
timelines.
the meeting, but I
I was
don't-
gonna say the timelines matched up similarly, but
I wasn't on the board.
Okay.
so.
I mean, I could check with legal to see if the variance for that particular building followed the ability to allow for a modification of the sign, and I could track that.
That's my feeling, is as if you were to be replacing a shed that is built on a property line. As long as you're replacing the footprint or within what the code allows, that's allowable, and because this was granted, that's where I would.
And I think that's
see this
defendable.
That's the argument I
still-
frequently
I don't
have.
want to make a determination based on me, because at the end of the day, I'll get legal counsel to chime in to say, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't do that. I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer and make decisions that are outside of my.
I think you're right, though. I think you're right.
If the application
I
was
would,
tabled.
I'd interpret it that way. that
I think
it
at
would be
this
variance,
point,
yeah.
if we can, at your request, if we can table this, it gives you time to think about possible possible designs for a new sign or other routes that you could follow that may be easier. That'll allow Sean to do a little bit of research on the 2015 decision.
And
That was something that
kinda
recently
work with-
came to light.
You can work with staff on amending your application based on the conversations we had today,
The
if
reason I
we're,
wanna
if we're a little
table it to
confused.
bring the other owner in if necessary.
Yes, that too.
was the reason. I mean, if we're okay as we stand, we may want to consider to not do anything. If we're not okay as we stand, that's a whole different discussion, and maybe we need to talk. I need some help with what exactly, I mean, maybe everybody needs to think about it a little bit, exactly what you want, because we want it to look right. We
Right.
want you guys to be happy. We want it to be good for our business. That's what we want. But putting those signs together may not be, you may look at it and say, wish we wouldn't have done that, don't like the way it looks. So I want it to look right, and what we put up looks, I think it looks really good. I don't know if you guys have been by it and saw it, but I think it looks really good. But I want to make sure that we don't, shoot all ourselves in the foot trying to do this the right way.
To give you a clear answer from what I'm reading and what I have before me, the current sign that is up would have to come before variance. And
Right.
correct me if anybody else is feeling differently on that.
No, that was my
Basically,
thought,
reading
too.
the code, the current sign that is up would not be able to stay up unless this board granted a variance.
Right.
Okay.
And
But we
we
didn't
did
just put it
ask
up.
zoning
I
before
understand.
that as well.
Right.
We already did that.
For the $3,000 sign.
Who gave the approval on that sign?
I'd have to check my email.
Okay. I'd be interested to know.
But, I mean, yeah.
I approved the sign permit because it's one building, two businesses. We have the same situation in other locations in Johnstown, and I've approved signs for all of the other businesses, and they're all in the buildings.
Maybe that's something for you guys to take a look at too.
I think staff can look at this internally, yeah.
That needs to be changed in the code, and I've talked about this for the last 7 years off and on. But right now, that sign, as far as I'm concerned, for what it's worth, the zoning inspector, it's a legal sign on South Main Street. Because we have it in other locations.
All right, so at this point, at your request, correct?
Yep.
We'll be tabling this?
That's fine with us.
We do
want you
have
guys
60 days from the time the application was
Correct.
submitted. So technically, we have until June 13th. just-
Right, I'm covering all
Welcome to
bases.
Johnstown.
We want you guys to be happy.
We want you to be
Get
happy,
Walter-
but I want to also open it up, is it may be possible that what we had from the beginning, that sign we had, may be okay as well, was my thought, if we look around and see what everybody else is doing.
So I guess just.
Yes or no to that? I mean, or else do we just leave it as is? I'm not gonna, I'm not shaking a bee's nest here, guys.
No,
I
no.
don't wanna do that, but I do want two signs up if I can get them.
My opinion is that staff needs to speak internally,
Good idea. Let me,
Yes.
just tell me yes or no, okay?
and that staff at that point that can help direction with the application based off the conversation tonight.
Yeah, there was some recent information that came to light on this too, that the board is just hearing, so.
The 2015
Yeah, I think their
piece was new.
this merits a conversation and you guys can have your conversation, staff will speak internally and we'll come back at this
You guys are
at the
probably
next
gonna have
meeting.
a lot of this coming up,
So,
I would suspect.
we're trying to get out ahead of these as much as we can. There's a lot that we've inherited, that we're working through, so we're trying to get out in front of it as much as we can.
I appreciate it.
Well, and the metrics too. If we can get metrics of the building to make sure that the square footage is being applied appropriately. And again,
Well,
it's
Jim, I think we did that, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, we did.
our sign's okay.
Your sign could be 5 times bigger than it is.
totally fine
We'll get that.
within the application itself. And
Just
again,
want the numbers.
this is a
moving
conversation
forward.
that we've had with many applications, is the completeness aspect of it. Not so much that what isn't being provided isn't
True.
ultimately allowable by the code, but as a matter of historical record and/or education of the board to make sure that we're crossing our Ts and dotting our Is across all places, that definitely helps. And we ask these and we have these conversations, not to make this a burden or a problem, because we're talking about two sides. But any decision that we make that is outside of what's in the code becomes a precedence that we then have to either weigh on adjusting the code or then have to apply to other businesses in a similar situation. And to your point, we're gonna continue to see these, and we just wanna make sure that we're being fair at the end of the day. That's
Mr. Chairman, if I may just give a little peek as to where I think we're going to go with this, or the context with just a recommendation. I'll just spit it out. The wording needs to be changed, and my recommendation would be change the wording from building. Because, as an example, the Kroger out parcel, you have the Kroger building, that's one building, has the Kroger sign. Then you have all the other little tenants. Is that defined as one building? And then we have all the tenants are above it.
I think this is part of that larger conversation I asked to have.
Now, they all have separate
Yeah.
entrances, and separate occupancy permits, that go through the county for different uses that exist in there. So I think, I'm not telling you one way or the other, but I think there needs to be a conversation of how you want to define the wording in here. Is it one building? Is it one
Unit.
entrance? Unit is
Yeah.
maybe another word, that you could use. I could see where you could start to get into the millennials and all these new ideas of this shared workspace, and you start to rent out desks, and then you got 15 signs on one building. I don't
That's
think
what I
that-
said, a co-hatch. I mean,
Right.
That's
I
what
don't
I've
know
talked
that
about,
meets it,
yeah.
but I think from a unit
Who's
perspective,
a millennial up here? That's
that may be something that's easily measurable. But if you're gonna go with one building, I would argue that this wording doesn't necessarily meet the intent. It doesn't necessarily apply to them because they're in a little bit different situation. They have a shared entrance. It's not necessarily a separate unit. It's one building that's sharing, it's cohabitation. So that's a little bit more of an obstacle.
I think in this situation, we're gonna have to proceed through a variance process of some sort.
I believe that to be.
Or we won't, if there's a difference in sign design, or we won't. And then it's just part of that larger conversation I wanna have on signage in general.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's how we proceed with this.
Key is just to make sure that we have all the information, so that if a variance is granted, that it's contextualized appropriately for future interpretation, and any conditions that are applied are also contextualized, because it's going to be used as an example in one way, shape, or form. That's what I mean when I talk about setting precedents, that's all. So I think that's a big part of why variances are given a 60-day lead time, or 60-day window, is to make sure that we have all the information in front of us to make an informed decision.
And to see sometimes, I know this sign code just took effect in 2022,
Right.
and, you know, it's an impossible task to make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And I think this is a perfect example of, it says building. I have to go by building because that's the verbiage that was incorporated. The city can get legally challenged if we're not enforcing our code.
Right.
However, noticing that there's a misstep that may have occurred and identifying how do we correct this, and then getting a path of how we go about that, whether that's an amendment to the current ordinance. That may not be applicable for their conversation, because I don't think it's apples to apples with this, but with other instances with multi-tenant buildings that exist already, that have separate units.
Right.
I think that's an easier conversation. This one, maybe it's a great opportunity for a variance because of the uniqueness that does exist
Right.
with this particular
Yeah,
situation.
I think we're at variance here, but not to bore our applicant here, and not to
I
bury you with
appreciate it. I need to know.
you know.
Because we could set this up so there's we don't have to have a shared entrance. We could have our own entrance, and that would be just the same as everybody else on that strip, right?
I don't disagree, and then, like I said, the newness of this is what's causing the problem. This was adopted in July of 2022. Since that time, we've not had a multi-tenant building application be presented to us, or else I would have the same situation,
one.
whether it was a shopping center that just gets put up, I'd be like,
22.
and we have an issue. And then that's when the trigger would go into effect.
Signage
To be
gets
fair,
redone every
I didn't
other
see
year.
this
Yeah, but don't we only have
until
one come
probably
through us, Chase,
Thursday or
right?
Friday, and then I noticed there was an issue.
And that was much
One on
easier.
each side.
Medicine
That was much
practice
easier to look
back
at.
that as well.
Yeah, 'cause it was
Under
only
the same
one-
building, as part of the same building.
And they have a sign.
All
They
right,
have a sign up, exactly.
But they have a different address, right?
Probably.
Yes,
Probably
yes,
right.
they
And
do
that
have,
maybe
they
is a
do have a
good,
different address.
maybe that's a great wording application, different addresses. I don't know. I'm tossing out.
we'll hash that out in another meeting.
Then you can
I
have
think
2.5, you have 51.5.
This is the point of the code, is that the variances influence what sets the baseline, and if you
Right.
get to the point where the variances are the rule and not the exception, then you've got to you gotta change the baseline.
It's
be
really a
considered,
separate
yeah.
building. I've walked it and it's
Yeah, it's
different
a-
brick.
it's a
It's
separate
a
brick and
different
everything
building.
else.
On the county auditor,
I
it's
just-
got a different owner too.
Well, I'd argue it's the same building.
On the county, well, I always look at the county auditor to see.
That's part of Kroger's, if I've ever
If it matters, that entrance does go into our only our office, not theirs.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
entrance spot right there at the foot of that.
That's why I love this as commission.
Anyway,
Thanks, Steve.
are we ready for a vote on tabling?
I'll motion to table.
I'll second.
Ben Lee,
Yes.
Steve Dyer,
Yes.
Jesse Cobble,
Yes.
Sean, you're gonna help me
Yes.
figure out what I need.
Someone's gonna have
Yes.
to help me now.
All right. We appreciate you guys coming in, and we appreciate your willingness to work with us, and we'll get this resolved one way or another within the next 60 days.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
One more thing, okay? Our grand opening is Saturday, you're all invited, come by and take a look and see inside the buildings, be glad to have you.
We've got Gather
Are you
rented
going
out
to
as
that?
well, so.
This real estate market out here is a little bit bizarre.
Oh, it's-
We're excited
it's
about making
fun.
it work right, because we've done this a long time, we're very good at it, and we understand Lincoln County like
Yeah.
nobody else, so. hope you guys
That's who.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, at this time, we will move on to our zoning inspector report for March and April.
Imagine.
March report, there was total, year-to-date, month-to-date, I'm sorry, 15 new homes by the end of March, and there was 8, which is normally in March, April, May, that's when builders want to get started, do 6 to 9 month builds. We were down to 27 lots in March, left at the end of March. I received 32 applications for March, and the rest of them are kind of spelled out there. The counts are. Property maintenance, William Street property, I don't know what to say about it. It's been kicked down. The people are supposed to be out of the house, and it keeps getting postponed. It's now, according to this, it was postponed to April 27th. Now it's postponed until May 22nd. The second house on William Street is still under court order, and the painting still hasn't been done. Only did 3 inspections because of the weather. A lot of yard signs, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we do April's report. New businesses, well, one just left here, Caldwell Banker, and Redwood Apartments, of course, we know still tabled. And I did see today, Sean, Ace Hardware is staked out.
Right.
They are staked,
Yep.
and we are, if I may, just as an update, we're working through, I think, one last item as far as stormwater management, kicking a couple options around. That was something that was caught at the last minute. And we're all desperately trying to come to a workable resolution so that they can keep moving and make sure that that contractor is not forced into a bad situation just from a little, I'll say it's little, it is an issue that we're trying to resolve, and there's a couple different options, and hopefully one of those is gonna work for them and for us, and we'll get it figured out.
Utility?
Stormwater management, the design had the water shedding to the back of the property. There's no natural stream, so there is a natural low area there that exists, and the engineer has done it in a way that theoretically would release at the same rate. The village intention is that prior to the construction, some of the water shed to the front, some of the water shed to the back. Now, all of the water would be collected and shed to the back, which is going to increase the amount of water that's going to be given to that particular property owner. So they're going to work with that particular property owner is one option. Another option is rerouting it to where it would go to the front open ditch, and then take the natural course that the ditch provides, and the water would move away from all sites and all locations. kind of a big issue to kind of throw in at the last minute. That's a whole different conversation with our engineering company that was supposed to review this particular piece, and another issue. We're not happy. So, anything else? Did you cover your whole report, Jim? I didn't mean to.
No, that was it, just these issues.
Did we find out who bought the family diner? Who's in contract?
Yeah, but the gentleman that called me about it has it in contract. He should be closed by now, but I can't say that he is. He owns a pizza place on Cherry Valley Road called Belisari's,
Okay.
and he wants to branch out. I think he said he's been there 8 years. This will be his first branch out from that. But his goal is to have a sit-down pizza place, and you can go in and get beer too.
Cool.
But he did not know that there was litigation pending with the current owners on the signage.
Should have been
They had failed
disclosed.
to tell him that.
It
So I don't
should,
know if that was-
legally, that should have been disclosed.
And good for him, just as a shout out to people that are doing their due diligence properly, he called the city and he wanted to know about the property.
He did the right thing.
And that will help out tremendously. The first call should be to the city whenever you're looking to purchase a particular piece of property and asking for any background.
Other
So,
than your realtor.
yeah, true. Kudos to him for doing that. Oftentimes we get into a situation where they buy it unknowingly, and then we have to be the bearer of bad news. This is an opportunity that he's doing it the right way so far. So kudos to him. If nobody else has anything, I'll be kicking this to council, and I just want to share real quickly. So this document's about 30 pages long. It's kind of a cheat sheet. It's a process for constructing, altering, expanding, occupying any structure or land. So goes through the process: zoning certificate, application, certificate of compliance, construction of use to be as an application design review board, and then it goes into just about every other piece that exists when you're going to do any type of construction. So obtaining a certificate of appropriateness, the process, supplemental district regulations. This goes into all your setbacks, construction, sewer lines.
It's called So You Want to Build in Johnstown.
So you want to build in Johnstown, and here's your 30-page document. This is pretty encompassing. So this is really, really involved. This has everything from this landscape designs and everything else. However, knowing that this is 30 pages, I put together.
It's 30 pages that references 200 pages.
No, that one's pretty encompassing.
I was
That one
gonna
literally
say.
has everything in it.
Yeah.
This is a one-page document, new commercial / business requirements for guide. First step, this is gonna start to be handed to anybody that comes through the door and they wanna do anything. I say, here's your piece of paper. First step, confirm the intended use is allowed in the zoning district in which you wish to locate. No variances can be given for use. You need to know that ahead of time. Step 2, confirm the land. You have enough land is available to meet all the zoning requirements, such as parking, and I give the section. Green space, 35%, 35%, 10%, 20%. Stormwater engineering and management, retention or detention of water, references all the sections. Next step, my recommendation, call Licking County Building Code to confirm the requirements for compliance. Particularly important if the use of a structure is changing from one classification to the next. Residential to commercial, retail to assembly, or any interior remodeling is needed. The city may require an occupancy permit prior to us issuing our permit. And I believe that's the standard practice, which Jim Blair goes through right now. Before we issue a zoning permit, occupancy permit has to be provided in most circumstances. Is that accurate?
And for businesses.
Yes, for businesses.
Yeah, but the county will require the occupancy permit before we get to it.
Yep.
Ours is exterior, theirs is interior.
Absolutely. Number 4, section 1183, understanding what is required for landscaping and screening. This may vary, but it gives the reference. Review section 1171, sidewalks. Submit for zoning certificate, follow the instructions outlined for submittal. Certificate of appropriateness is required for any non-residential structure, and then a sign permit. also another reference to the section. So this is really gonna hopefully put some of the task and requirement on the applicant and say, we're giving you the map, you just need to do a little bit of time and research to go to the section, reference it, pull it up, see what's applicable to your particular situation. And then there's always the disclaimer, meant to be a guide, not all encompassing other requirements that may be necessary. So this is hopefully going to be a tool that will alleviate some of this.
Some of this, of what we just had and the
Hand-holding.
last probably 2 applications. There's at least been 2 applications in the last 3 months that we've had some ambiguity in how they were applied.
So this is
Yeah.
this is a tool that I'm hoping that will make everyone's life a little bit easier. The applicants, the cities, really putting the onus on the particular applicant to do their research. And we're telling them a section. There's no reason that they shouldn't be able to reference this.
Right.
To be fair, if we don't provide the sections, Walter will show you, the book is pretty tough to guide itself through. So I feel like this is a nice olive branch to any type of business that's located here. So just so you're aware, I'm gonna present this to council, just to make sure they're on board with allowing us to do this as a guide and a document.
Like it.
So anyhow,
We get copies of that?
absolutely. This one's not as pretty, not as polished, but it's functional.
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. It's got radioactivity in it, so.
There might be some on
know.
Track Street.
Pretty encompassing. It's 30 pages, so it's got a lot in there.
Are you aware
Just
of
for-
the January 2020 development approval procedures?
January 2020 development approval procedures. I'm so new, I don't have any background. Do you have something that I've already created?
No, this was I think Bailey and Jim, you guys put this together.
Here's Bailey's project.
Yeah,
Okay. I have no background on that.
okay.
Is it something that's similar to this?
I've always,
Similar.
I keep everything.
We
Sorry,
started,
pages.
we started talking about that and trying to do that a couple
It's
years ago.
15 pages.
Semi-similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
It gives a process of what to expect from a timeline perspective and kind of a punch list on what happens when you submit a development. I would think that there would be, this would still
Oh,
be
it's
out
gotta
there in
be
the
in.
shared drive.
It's probably on,
Or if you wanted to make copies of it,
I think it's on the comments.
okay. I can use that as a
Something's
point of
going on.
reference as well.
Village of Johnstown Development Approval Procedures from January 2020. I've just kept it as a guideline just to check against, when we have things submitted sometimes.
Absolutely.
I understand, but if you wanted to maybe incorporate that in some capacity,
I will
the work's already done. There's some flow charts in here too.
Okay.
Now you tell him
It's
after
not 30 pages.
after he finishes his 30
Well,
pages.
they don't have the design review stuff in there, so
Right.
that took up a tremendous amount. The tree ordinance for the
Yeah.
tree removal, that's in that 30-page document.
But if there's some
So
pieces
he's
in here
created
that can
McDowell's,
be.
but we had McDonald's.
I love it. Yes, absolutely.
Um,
No, I appreciate it. I'll definitely check it out.
all right. Jim, you still had April to go through, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. April, we had total, year-to-date, month-to-date, 21, and there was 5 in April. Remaining, the number on the remaining building lots, right, kind of plus or minus a couple. They didn't include their parking lot at Pulte, so it's in there now. Total all permits, April 28. April property code enforcement's entered, open gov is 5. There was, basically the numbers are there. Still the William Street property postponed again. I've been trying to get court action there. Well, they have been fined, but they're still there for 5 years. Anyhow, still at the other William Street, I have followed up with the guy that's under court order, and he can't get anybody to do the painting. So that's the excuse he's giving. And the rest of it, we talked about Redwood Apartments. Are we gonna leave that tabled if we get to that? Ace Hardware we know is starting, and Leafy Dell's still sitting there, ready to go.
All right.
I have one other thing, I wanted to pass out copies. This is just some information that's worth reading. It's about short-term rentals, because we are actually dealing with short-term rentals every day. And that's only going to get worse.
Who's surfing the Airbnb and VBRO website?
Jim is
I try to.
when he gets enough time.
Keep up with it.
Facebook
A lot of them,
Marketplace.
you can't find out where the property's at unless you
Right.
put your credit card number in.
Right.
They're not gonna.
You won't get the exact address,
No,
but you'll
you will
get
not get it.
close.
Sean, I give you one.
Yes.
recently.
I'm good.
I'll give you one.
Okay.
This
So
is,
this is-
this came from Granville, is how they're doing it. And they have welcomed Airbnbs in 3 zoning districts, as long as, but it's based on a percentage of houses that's in that zoning district. It's 5%. So whoever's first in, maybe is gonna get their Airbnb, and the rest of them won't.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look at that for sure. What did we look at originally? I know we looked at Columbus. I think I pulled Nashville out. We probably did look at some of these.
Yeah, we looked at some other ones.
Okay, yeah, we can take a look at these. Try to see how we do it. Granville's probably got a little more draw than we do with the college there.
Right, and it's a good fit for college town, what they've done. But it also means that if you live in one of the districts and there's 60, 70 houses in there, you know, it's like a condo association.
Yeah, where you
Most
can
condo
have,
associations, a certain percentage is allowed to be rented. And that's kind of what they've applied here.
it's an
Do
interesting
you think
idea.
that would make
It's a good
your,
idea, very good idea.
do you think that would make enforcement easier or tougher?
Well, I think it'd be much easier.
Okay,
Because once you get whatever that district's allowed, you're done with it.
And then you could say, it's not like we prohibit it or like second floor, blah, blah, blah.
Or
It's
someone's doing
just,
it
you
illegally.
wait in line,
Yeah.
wait in line, and it gives them a path so they don't have to fight it.
We have people
It's an
from
interesting idea.
Colorado that had a house built in the Pulte development, put a picture of the house, didn't even have the driveway in yet, furnished it, and we're trying to rent it for $745, I think it was, for 2 nights. And she said that she called in here and some woman told her, oh, no, you can do that. No,
It wasn't me.
no.
That's so
It was-
wasn't Teresa.
it was Bailey. Bailey, she's gone now. All right, anyway, it wouldn't have been Bailey. She wouldn't do that.
7:45.
She wouldn't do that. She's just the one that's gone. But,
I got one other thing, we've talked a lot about signs. This is a real problem, so I've asked the police department for help. These are pictures of signs this pest control company put up all over town, and what they do, and it isn't just them, I deal with at least one company every year. They come in at night with a pickup truck and a 10-foot ladder, and they put signs, they screw gun them to posts. I can't get them down, so I have to have the city service department bring out their bucket truck or a ladder with a pickup truck. And they're really hard people to deal with. They go to that much trouble. Last year, it was the tar and pitch guy. He threatened to kill me before it was over with. So this guy here is just as bad. So I had 3 show up, and I contacted the company. He hung up on me. I kept calling him back. He kept hanging up on me. And then I was able to get 2 of them down, or no, 1 of them down. Service department took the other 2 down, and then a week later, he put up 8 more.
I have a truck and a 10-foot
Well-
ladder. I'll drive the truck and you can ride the ladder.
John, you weren't here when last time we discussed this issue about these signs, but my recommendation that wasn't accepted at the time, because I think it might have been outside the purview of zoning, was to have a fine for each sign that's put up outside of the code. And, you know, I know that there was a little bit of an argument about what's the enforceability of those citations, was the counter argument, but it's a good deterrent, if nothing else.
Yeah, we would have to have it as a police action where they could write a citation, or
Yeah.
otherwise I have to take the person to court.
Exactly, so if.
There is a fine at court though, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah, they could be fined in court.
You'd have to probably catch them in the act.
With this one, since there's a name and
And there's a name and a phone number,
Yeah.
but what's to say they didn't sub that out to a third-party contractor
If
that
you make-
hung the signs?
This guy here, he puts them up himself. He actually admitted that. So I think they're all down again. I haven't been to all those locations in the last day, but Dan was working on them. getting them down.
But it seems all the time that it takes the city, it seems like
There should be
the
some-
fine should be commensurate to the, and if the fine needs
It's
to
gonna
be
be hard
increased.
to enforce.
It's gonna be a hard one to enforce.
And
But people I go back to my point that having a strict rule, I don't know if these geniuses look at what the penalties are for that jurisdiction, but it might also get around that don't put these up in Johnstown because they'll fine you $1,000 a
I
sign.
don't think it'd be bad to have it on the books, because if you do somehow catch them in the act, I mean, the officers cruise the town all day, every day. If they catch them in the act,
So this would
get
be
'em.
what committee would that go to? Safety service or police? Just
Safety and service, probably.
so.
Yeah, if you wanted to make it a police function, it would definitely fall into safety and service.
Can Jim,
can
do you
make
go to the safety and
recommendations.
service meetings? Probably not.
Oh, no, they're
I
open.
used to go
Anybody
to
can
them.
go.
Yeah.
Could zoning make a recommendation for this issue to be raised at safety and service?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. we could.
I make a
It's
motion
one of
for
those
them
things
to,
that should probably be a police action.
Yeah,
if
it would
they
have to
see
be.
Someone putting them
well,
up.
I'd like to make a
Well, it would
motion.
have to be, because if they're making threats to you already, like, I don't want you out there having to get these guys.
I'm gonna make this quick, and cause it's not for us to discuss, it's not our committee, but I would like, since it did come up in our committee, I would like to make a formal recommendation that safety and service discuss the idea and, discuss
Maybe.
if there's a remedy that they think is appropriate.
And they know about it now. Rusty, I sent an email describing all the issues and with some photographs from this year and last year, so.
Does that need to be passed by second or?
If you want to formalize it, yeah.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All
Thank you
right.
for bringing that up, Jim.
Jim, anything else in your report?
No,
Okay. Does anyone have anything else for Jim?
Oh, for Jim, no.
All right, we'll move on to other business. Go ahead, Ben.
Two things I was gonna ask about Redwood, since it was brought up.
No, great question. If you want, I can try to answer that. So I talked to our legal counsel, got a recommendation from him. The reason you no longer see it on here is there's a couple different options that we could have went through. His recommendation at this point was because it has been tabled for so long that it can kind of dissipate off of our books because there's been no action on it from either the applicant or by the board. So that's the easiest route. That was his recommendation. He said, if you wanted to have a formalized action, you could bring it off the table, vote on it, or you could call the applicant to have them remove it or request for it to be removed. The submittal to be removed, that's not the right words, but withdraw their application. But he said neither of those are necessary at this point. You can just simply remove it, and time has elapsed enough to where if they came in, they would have to resubmit their application. I said, okay, if that's your legal
As
counsel.
long as it's
recommendation.
noted that Frost
That
Todd
doesn't
Brown
make any
said that,
sense.
and I don't see a bill for litigation later on,
Doesn't make any
I'm
sense.
good with it.
Our code doesn't ever have a sunset rule in table.
And that's what I'm thinking, we don't have anything specific to just letting something die on the vine as it is. And
Yeah.
I can see a scenario where that property then gets, it's
The
in
same
contract for
application
something
comes
else.
before
You get
you.
another, now you have two applications for the same piece of property.
He seemed pretty
I don't like
confident in
leaving
it.
things open.
Did you cite the RC at all?
I can check. He seemed pretty confident in his recommendation as far as just allowing it to kind of dissipate. I don't know if there's a statute of limitations that exist, just in general.
Probably
So
case law.
I'll reconfirm. That's not a problem.
I'm fine with letting sleeping dogs lie as long as there's not a bill that comes up later.
I don't like to leave things open-ended.
I don't blame you. I'll check with that.
Do you
But
wanna
yeah,
take it
if
off?
he feels like we can, and there's defensibility with an ORC or something else, or there's precedents that if it were challenged, that there's recourse, personally, I would be more comfortable with understanding that than just letting it float into the ether, never to be seen again.
We want, tell, let Yaz know that we want the citations on this.
Right?
That's me.
That's what I said, it's gonna be noted, and if I see a court case on it, not paying that
He
bill.
hates us.
The other
I thought
question
you
I
called
had,
him like 2 months ago. Didn't you talk to him?
Yeah, in this conversation I had was probably about, just to confirm, was probably about 3 weeks ago. So, yeah. And this was with Thad, but they all work for the same firm. Thad's probably more of their zoning guy.
Yeah.
So, but I will confirm, I'm right there with you.
the other question that I had, I was asked to bring up the gravel parking lot for the school
Oh,
and what the status is with that.
I don't have enough background, but
The fact that it's
Give
still
you the
gravel.
background.
That it's-
I don't know whether it was varianced or anything, so.
No, it was a handshake deal with the school, with the former school superintendent and the board. And I've approached them, they don't even answer my emails on it now, so.
Huh.
I
Okay.
sent an email about 3 weeks ago.
There's a,
Can't wait to have that call.
Yeah,
Okay, so.
good luck.
Gravel parking lot, it was never approved.
It was allowed as a temporary parking lot
How,
prior
Yeah.
to construction.
what was the definition of temporary? A
Until
year?
construction is complete.
Okay.
Or it would be paved.
Now Ben says, get that dust out of my yard.
I'm not bringing it up from me. I was asked to bring it up by others.
Okay,
I know
so
Mr. Poland there, he's not happy about it either.
do we have any formalized document that represents the agreement that says gravel parking lot will be temporary until construction is complete? Teresa?
do we remember what meeting?
We'll have to look back.
That wasn't us, that was before us, I'm pretty sure.
It was done through emails.
I'm pretty sure there's
Okay.
more to that. I've got.
I'll try to find out as much as I can.
Was that conditionally approved based on that?
My understanding was that nothing came before the board formally.
Oh.
It was conversations that happened in conjunction with the new high school, old high school, junior high renovation, PAC, softball field, Searfoss intermediate, all of that
It
campus.
was discussed at a board meeting.
But if it was, I don't know.
Was it the one with at the intermediate school
I just.
you're talking about?
And then,
On the
since we're
side?
talking about gravel,
Right behind
just
his
pointing
house.
out, it looks like the,
Between-
across the street
between
from
there
the
and
school, that new
37.
house, they're finalizing the concrete driveway there. It looks like they did the approach.
They
I'm
did the
assuming,
approach first,
and I'm assuming he's gonna do the rest of that. Okay,
that's his commitment.
cool.
Cool.
Hopefully we have that in writing somewhere.
Well, he didn't get a variance, I'm sure of that.
And I'm fine with that. I don't mind, construction seasons exist. I don't want a guy pouring freaking concrete in the middle of winter.
He's definitely aging his gravel though. I like it.
It's compacting. And it looks like, well, he's done the approach, so.
It's compacted now. It's settled. It's thoroughly settled.
And that hasn't been, I wanna say,
It's
he's
the best
last
concrete in
summer.
town.
Yeah, we have the same issue
Yeah.
on Buena Vista. But some of those houses have taken over 2 years to build. And just because of COVID,
Sure.
construction work.
One of those builders went out of business too.
2 of them, one of them went out of business
Yeah.
and stuck 2 people, and they paid for about 30 to 40% of the
Yeah.
house twice.
Oh, man.
And they're both moved in now.
Okay.
All right, anything else from,
It's terrible,
Commission?
isn't it?
I have to stop myself from saying council. The only other thing I had was, so in terms of enforcement, did we ever do anything with, when 811 gets called, did we ever do anything with that? When 811 gets called, we have to mark the water lines, kick an email over to zoning enforcement that there's gonna be a fence or something built, so they know to look for that, so that there's a permit being filed. I've seen that done now in other municipalities where I call 811 to mark the lines. We have to mark the water, so they send you an email that says, watch out for this building project.
Okay.
Good idea.
And then they kick an email to me, the contractor. Now, I always get my permits, of course, but some people don't. But nobody's usually dumb enough to not call 811. So,
Is that it sounds like a cool system. Is that a system where we just call up?
Should just be something easy because, you know, when they call to mark the lines, they call the city. So our service department would mark the lines. Would go out and mark the water lines, so they could just kick an email to enforcement and say, there's a project at this, on this address. They won't,
We don't, I don't know, that they've requested oops or for the water.
you won't, but the water
I have it
department
on
will.
an application to call 811, I actually have the number on some applications.
Yeah, you won't know it, but service department will know immediately, and they can just kick you an email.
I see what you're saying.
Here's
So
the address.
internally.
Because as a contractor, I have to register the type of project, what I'm digging with,
Right.
and all that stuff. So you'll know basically what I'm building. And then you definitely know the address, so you can just send an email to the contractor or whatever applicant, because all the contact info is on there from 811. So you can basically just kick an email to the contractor or the homeowner and say, make sure you file your permit for your project. Thank you. Have a great day. That's about all I get.
The authority on that happens to be sitting over there, possibly. Teresa, do those utility marking work orders come through you all,
No,
or is that
they-
internal?
We have
Through the water.
a city right-of-way permit. I'm sorry, yeah, no. We're not talking about right-of-way permit. You're talking about the oops.
Yeah, when the guys go out to
All
mark,
dig.
Yeah.
you do a
Those
work
go to
order.
Daniel. They go in, I think they go to Daniel. I don't
Okay.
know what system they have, but.
So it doesn't go to the water department, he does all
He
of them.
actually calls in, like, when we need something, when they're doing work, he'll call
Okay.
811. I don't know what they get, honestly.
They get an email basically, and it's just yeah, you get a ticket and it has all the contact information and everything on there for whoever's digging. Because if you're the homeowner and you dig, you're liable for it. Whoever calls 811's the one that's liable for it.
But
I don't know what all comes.
you don't issue the work order up here, they do that, it goes directly to them, it
goes
sounds
directly
like.
to them.
Okay, so if you or Jim can connect with Daniel just to say, hey, moving forward,
When you call 811.
contact the zoning department.
They say, okay, they're gonna do. the
Well, you won't have to
master
do anything with 811, because if he has to mark the line, he's got all the contact
But
info and he
811
can,
contacts Johnstown.
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
And then Johnstown does its thing and reports back to 811.
Yeah.
I think what Ryan's saying is, this is.
Daniel can kick an
This is
email.
my guy that
to-
marks it, if he could notify
Yeah.
the zoning department.
Yep.
To make sure we have an
Make
applicant.
sure
Permits.
right hand, left hand knows what they're
And
doing.
there's a couple cities now that I've noticed are doing it, so
That makes sense,
Yeah.
I can understand that.
so that way you know, I mean,
About
get our
once a
money,
year,
first of all.
there's a water
we'll
line.
get our money on every well, if they don't call 811, but then good luck to them anyway.
Yeah,
I'll never remember, that's why I'm kicking it over to you.
We'll find out real quick if they didn't call 811.
yeah, if you call 811 and they mark it and you hit it, then you're not liable. If you hit it where it wasn't
Oh, yeah.
supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't call 811,
So almost everybody does because,
Yeah, because if you hit fiber optic, you're gonna wish you hit the
Oh, yeah.
power line. I'd rather hit the power line than fiber optic. There won't be anything left to bill me for.
you hit one on Central Station.
I hit one on Central Station. Yeah, it was 4 feet off the mark.
Yeah.
Were you still like, oh no?
Well, luckily the kid that was working for me had attitude that day and threw a spud bar into the hole, and it hit the line and shot sparks like 20 feet out. If he'd have been holding that, he'd have been in bad shape. But it was, the red line was here, 4 feet over is where we drilled, hit the power line. Yeah, I was not a happy guy that day.
Did you have to pay for it? Since it was off?
No, it wasn't my fault because it was off. But thank God nobody was hurt. Like that's what I was more mad about than anything. I don't want to have to go home and tell somebody's kid, like tell somebody their kid got juiced while he's working for me.
That's not a good PR.
Yeah, it's not a good way to do business. So yeah, I think it's an easy, just internal process
good call out.
to do that. That's it.
That'd be great.
So we'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, guys. Have a great night. Thanks to our audience for hanging around.
Did we do public comment?
Kids choir concert
Oh, I
still
missed it.
going on.
That was the night?
Okay.
No wonder you're trying to drag it out, this meeting out.
No, I want to go. It was his choir concert, so,
I know, Joe's there too.
Yeah.